In this video, I'm going to be going in depth on how to build in Fortnite. I'll be starting each section off with more of the basics, but I'll explain how each move progresses and how you can progress once you've mastered the first variation of a move. I'll have timestamps, so feel free to skip around if you want to watch a specific part. Before I get started, creator codes got reset at the beginning of the month, so I'm back down to 0. Last month we hit 400, so if we could somehow hit 500 this month, that would be absolutely insane. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's get into it. To start off my introduction to building, it's important to understand the build grid. A basic understanding of how your crosshair and blueprints interact with the build grid is a foundation for all the moves in this video. First off, let's understand the distance at which you can place each build. Starting off with the shortest, we have floors. Floors can only be placed when you're standing directly on the tile you want to place it or close to the border of the tile. They are possible to place diagonally into another tile, but you'd have to be close to the diagonal intersection of the grid. If you look anywhere above halfway up a wall, the floor will place up, and anywhere under halfway up the wall, and the floor will place below. Next are walls. Walls can be placed from further than floors. You can place a wall a full tile away as long as you're somewhat close to the next tile you're placing it in. If you look straight out, you'll place it in that tile, while if you look straight down, it'll place in the tile you're standing on straight in front of you. The main place it's lacking in range is diagonally. You physically cannot place a wall diagonally no matter what angle you get. The best you can get is standing to the side and back a little of the tile you want to place it in, and look at the very edge of the floor to place the wall. Next up are ramps and cones. These two can be placed from the furthest away. Ramps can be attached to either floors or walls. If you look down at a floor, the ramp will place on top of it, and if you look at a wall, the ramp will attach to that. A bonus tip for ramps is that if you're falling, always try to catch yourself with ramps, not cones or floors. Since they place so far away, and you can place two together that extend below you, they are by far the easiest pieces to catch yourself with. Finally, cones are the last build piece. They also place from extremely far away, and just like floors, if you're looking more than halfway up a ramp or wall, it'll place on top, and if you're looking under halfway, it'll place below. If you look slightly above a wall or ramp, it'll place over, which is super useful for coning people. The next topic I want to talk about are ramp rushes. When fights start, oftentimes you will find you and your opponent ramping at each other, so naturally that's a good place to start. There's a couple things you want to keep in mind when you're ramping at your opponent. First off, every time you place a ramp, there's dead time between you placing it and when you need to take your builds out to place the next ramp. So in that time, you want to make sure that you're tack sprinting for as long as possible to ensure you're going up as fast as possible. The next vulnerability is getting sprayed out. So if possible, you either want to place floors and ramps to connect yourself better, or place two ramps and stand in the middle so that if either one gets sprayed out, you won't fall. Now, assuming both you and your opponent have ramped at each other, here's the best move to do. If your ramps cross like this, as I said earlier, you can place cones from very far away. So before you get to your final ramp, you want to cone his final ramp and then place walls and 90 up to block his height access off as well as ascend layers quickly. Now, if your ramps meet like this and his ramp gets above yours, the best thing to do is immediately place a floor so that they can't place a floor to block you off, and then edit through the floor and place a cone to stop their upwards momentum. And then from there, you can either jump up and try to box them through the ramp, or you can just side jump and start 90ing up on your own. If your ramps meet like that again, but your ramp goes over him instead of just walking up onto it, to avoid what I just said you should do if you're below, you should 90 off the ramp before that to ensure you keep high ground. Now, if you're ramping someone who's already on high ground looking down at you with either an AR or a shotgun, here's every level of what you want to do. For beginners, you'll first want to learn how to do single tile edits through cones on every ramp like this. Make sure as soon as your cone edits, you immediately try to place a ramp and another cone to block any shots. As you get better and faster, you can move from single tile edits to double tile edits like this, and then eventually, you can do triple edits to get the most amount of builds possible between you and your opponent. The most advanced ramp towards height that I know of is this. You want to build two ramps and alternate which one you're running up as you edit through, and make sure to block your angles every time you switch ramps. This is extremely effective because not only are you putting a ton of builds in between you and your enemy, you're also making it really hard to track where you are on the ramps, and you're giving yourself a better angle and more time to place protection before you can get shot. The next super important build move that everyone needs to master are 90s. Simply put, 90s are the foundation to most retakes. To do a 90, you want to run up your ramp on the left side, and then when you're around 3/4 the way up your ramp, you want to jump. Place 4 walls and a floor and another ramp at a 90-degree angle to the original one you jumped off of. After you land on your next ramp, you want to run to the same spot and do the exact same sequence of builds again. After 2 90s, you'll get jump fatigue, so to continue, you'll either want to run up a ramp like this and do 2 more 90s, or you can learn how to do infinite 90s. Infinite 90s allow you to continue doing 90s even after you jump twice in a row, by doing a third 90 without jumping. For the no jumping 90, you want to run all the way to the top of your ramp before starting the same build sequence. That way, even without a jump, you'll be pushed to the top of the ramp and floor, and that way you don't end up below the ramp. Another way to speed up your 90s are, first off, during that no jumping 90, you can tack sprint while you run to the top of your ramp to make it faster, and second off, if you time the placements of your builds just right, the placement of the floor, ramp, or both will boost you a little faster and make you jump a little higher. Now that you've mastered 90ing, there's another fundamental building move that's used in tons and tons of sequences: side jumps. Side jumps are not only something that's necessary to learn to execute retakes, but also something you need to learn so that you can have an adaptable building style and take high ground innovatively in creative and in real matches. The most basic form of side jumps, and what you want to start off by learning, is this: place a ramp and a cone and then jump from the ramp onto a floor that is level with the cone. This may seem difficult at first, but if you can figure out exactly what angle you need to be running at and the timing of the jump, it's super replicable and you'll be able to get it to a point where you never mess up. Before you move on to the next level, make sure you've mastered it on both sides. You want to be just as good as jumping on the right as you are on the left. The next level of the side jump is landing on top of a ramp facing the same direction as the ramp you jumped off of. This shouldn't be much more difficult than landing on just a floor, but if you're struggling with it, try landing a little further back towards the beginning of the ramp, that way you don't get put below the ramp. The next level, and what most people struggle doing, is a side jump landing on a ramp facing outwards the way that you jumped. The trick to mastering this one is trying not to jump too far out and keeping your momentum towards the initial ramp, that way you don't get put below your next ramp. As soon as you jump, you want to look straight down so you can instantly place a floor and a ramp at the same time as soon as you can. The last level of side jumps are tack sprinting ones. After you've mastered the normal ones, you can then learn to tack sprint jump off the ramps to make this move faster. The trick to mastering these is utilizing your crosshair's control of your movement to the fullest so that you can move in one direction as much as you need to. Before I move on to any retakes, I want to go over some edit coursing and tunneling. The basic thing you need to know before trying to do anything more advanced is just this: placing a floor to run over as well as a wall that you edit through. Once you're comfortable doing that, you can start switching it up a little bit by turning different directions and eventually placing walls to your sides as well. Now that you have these fundamentals down, you're ready to do some tunneling. The most basic form to tunnel is like this: placing 2 floors on your top and bottom and 1 wall on each side. You can either place a wall in front of you and edit through it, or just walk through it and continue tunneling. The next tunnel is a diagonal tunnel. You want to start off with 2 floors again, and then place a wall in front of you, and then either a wall on your right or left, depending on which way you want to go. From there, you want to walk through the opening you left, and place another wall in front of you, and then one in the opposite direction of the first side you chose. You can chain this together to make a snake diagonal tarp. To go up or down, it's the same thing. You just place 2 ramps instead of 2 floors, and then 2 walls on each side instead of 1. Doing diagonal ramp tunnels is possible too. It's just extremely mat inefficient and pretty hard to do. Feel free to slow down the video if you want to learn to do it yourself. You can also tarp downwards the same way you tarped upwards, just by rotating your ramps. This tarp is a good way to block a lot of angles without using a ton of mats. Just place a floor and then a ramp over your head. You can do it straight or diagonally depending on the situation, although the diagonal version blocks a lot more angles. Another thing that a lot of people don't know is that this tarp can also be done with floors on top instead of on the bottom, and you can walk from ramp to ramp like this, or if you do it straight, you can edit through the ramp like this. For edit coursing, you want to start with the same move that you started with for tarping. Instead of editing the wall the same way over and over though, try to get comfortable making different edits on the wall that challenge your movement more. For example, a peanut butter peak or a top 3 edit will force you to jump over it. I recommend you do this on a map like Jiven's How to Build map. That way, once you've mastered any of these things, you can up the movement speed and try to get them down on an even faster speed. I'll leave the code in the description in the comments. Once you've mastered that, you can start mixing in different build pieces like a ramp and trying to edit through that too without stopping your momentum. Then you can try combining those by editing a ramp, and then you can make it more challenging wall edit. Then you can start trying to go diagonally and continuing to try to challenge yourself more and more, like by doing 2 edits on the ramp instead of 1. Next up is edit coursing up a ramp. The basis to a lot of edit coursing is triple edits. So it's important that if you can't do infinite single, double, or triple edits, you put some time in every day to just that for a couple of minutes. A more advanced form of triple editing that you can practice if you're too advanced for just normal ones is these backwards triple edits like this, or even quad edits like this. The last step to learning to edit course is learning to edit down. Mixing in little moments where you edit downwards like this will make your edit coursing a lot more maneuverable as well as practical. Now I'm going to get into some retakes that you should learn. First, I'm going to start with some basic fundamentals that you should learn for retakes, and then you can chain them together and adapt them to complete more advanced retakes. First off is the scissor ramp. The scissor ramp is the most basic retake, and it's basically just ramping up while blocking your head with more ramps above them. The easiest way to start a scissor ramp is either by placing and editing a wall that you can connect your top ramp to, or just starting from a floor and using that to place the first ramp over your head. The next fundamental high ground retake is the thwifo cone. Thwifo cone is either when you're just ramping up or you're scissor ramping. You look back and place walls and a cone above your head. This by itself is good protection, but later I'll show you ways you can turn it into a highly effective retake. Next is a high wall. By looking up, you can place walls super high up that you can use to build off of or edit through. Try running to the top of a ramp and then place walls 2 tiles high and then building up to them and editing through them. The next move is a protected side jump. If you learned the side jumps I showed early in the video, then you should be able to do this easily. You want to place a ramp and a cone like always, but then before you jump, you want to place 2 walls through your cone, execute the side jump, and then immediately place a cone above your head to protect you, as well as a wall to whatever side your opponent is on. Next is just a ramp up like this with cones and protecting walls. You want to place a ramp and cones, and then before you edit the cone, you want to already place protective walls, and then you can edit through the cone and wall at the same time. You can chain it together and repeat the process over and over again like this. Make sure you get it down on both sides, and maybe even try placing walls on both sides at the same time. Next up is the Phase Sway Classic retake. It starts off with the 2-tile double edit, and then you want to place a ramp, floor, ramp to catch yourself on. From there, you can chain it together and practice it on both sides by placing a cone above the ramp and doing more ramp, floor, ramps from there. Now, finally, moving on to the more advanced retakes, I'm going to be taking some of the fundamentals from the last section we just learned and combining them into advanced retakes. First off is the Thwifo cone side jump. It starts just like a normal Thwifo cone, except when you look back to place the walls and cone, you want to jump and land on a floor and ramp that faces sideways, and from there, you want to do the protected side jump from earlier by placing 2 walls through the cone, and then landing on a ramp protected by another cone. The next advanced retake is a high wall side jump. To do this move, as you jump, you want to place walls too high and then land on a ramp, and then you can go up another tile and either use the wall to cone your opponent, or you can just edit through it and continue going up. Next up is the backwards ramp. Start off by scissor ramping again, but this time look backwards and place a ramping cone. From there, you can do a high wall in either 90 to get up, or use the wall to go for piece control again. The last retake I have to show you are ramp flips and cone flips. If you have a ramp or cone above you, you can place walls and then flip the ramp or cone to start walking up it like it's a 90. You can do these over and over and over again and alternate between a ramp and a cone. Make sure you're jumping as you flip the cone or ramp so you don't get put beneath it. That's it for me. I'm thinking of starting streaming soon, so if you made it to the end, check my Twitch follow in case I go live in the next couple weeks. Thanks for watching The Long Astros. Bye.